I have an article coming out over at 1 Peter 5. I read it this morning. Praise be to God. Thank you for sending it over. 300 years of Masonic infiltration, 300 years of changing attitudes within the church, sort of cooperating when they feel it's convenient to do so. What's the story here?
Yeah, so what I wanted to do, Joe and Adrian, was oftentimes, there's some Catholic circles, that we have where we would like to reduce what we call an infiltration down to maybe just one event, maybe to like people like to narrow down to like maybe the Alta Vendetta of the Carbonari, and they published that document, the Carbonari, the Alta Vendetta, saying we're going to infiltrate, we're going to put our own pope in place, and people like to reduce it just to that one event. Like that's when the whole thing began. But typically, when something goes this bad, this wrong, it usually can't narrow down to just one thing. So what I wanted to do in this essay that's coming out 1 Peter 5 this week was really just to put this whole thing like a context over the last 300 years, beginning with Pope Clement XII and his nephew Neri trying to tell him, Clement wanted to put out this papal bull in enmity saying, Catholics cannot be Freemasons in 1738. And his nephew Neri was like, hey, those Freemasons over there in England, they're not like the ones in Europe. They're just having fun and things like this. And it's that type of myth, really, that you see still today in the Catholic Church. You still have Catholics making the same case as Cardinal Neri, saying, oh, Freemasons are different. The ones in Europe are different than the ones in England. Not when it comes to Masonic principles. They may be different in their attitudes and their externals, but it's still Freemasonry. And so it really started then. And so in the essay, I tracked the whole thing up going from there until during World War II and until post-Vatican II and all the way up to today, showing how the Catholic Church, every time they had, people in the Catholic Church, some people, every time they had an opportunity to make friends with Freemasons, they chose to make friends with them rather than enforce the condemnation against Freemasonry.
Yeah, that's so true. And I mean, I'm thinking of Blessed Pius IX and his relation with the Freemasons before he kind of had a conversion. But, what you said there about trying to reduce the revolution to one event, that's one of the reasons why I really like, and I talk about this often, Professor Plinio, because he talks about the revolution and the Masonic revolution. There's one element of the revolution. You have the Protestant Revolution, you have the French Revolution, you have all these different revolutions happening, and they're coinciding with one another. And Professor Plinio just coins it as the revolution to try to categorize it easier. But can't be reduced down to just one event. But I do want to ask though. Do you know the background behind Blessed Pius IX all the way back then with what is that saint? What's his name? The saint of children, John Bosco. The John Bosco and his fight against the Freemasons during his time.
No, I know. I'm very familiar with Pius IX during his liberal years. He comes in, he's a pope. The liberals supposedly put him in place because of his work he had done as a cardinal. They thought he's going to be their ally, and he was for quite a while until he realizes that you can't really be friends with these people, and they try to kidnap him and all that stuff. And so, but before all that, before he became more sort of conservative, he had actually. It took a stone from the resources of the Vatican, sent it to the United States. And this stone was going to be used as the cornerstone of a Masonic edifice to be built to George Washington. So, and so his thought, it seems to be that, make friends with your enemies. Also, but although there's some rumors that he was a Freemason during his youth as well. So there's a lot of pieces there.
You quote Pius IX in your article by saying clearly he taught in 1873 in Etsi Multa, the church teaching does not distinguish between sects of Freemasonry. Teach them that these decrees refer not only to Masonic groups in Europe, but also to those in America. in other regions of the world, close quote. Now, what I found interesting about that is you and I have discussed the Freemason issue on several occasions. You're a past Freemason. I'm a past Freemason. You were a pretty high-ranking Freemason as opposed to me, who's just a lowly third-degree Blue Lodge guy.
You're always being so self-deprecating. You're funny.
At any rate, the point I'm trying to make is I do see some distinctions here, because a lot of times we'll talk about Freemasons and people will listen and go, come on, my uncle, my dad, my cousin, my neighbor, my coworker, they're all good guys. They wear funny hats and drive little go-karts at parades and try to raise money for hospitals, and they do charitable projects. You guys are exaggerating things. How could we be exaggerating things, David O'Gray?
Because I think that is part of the success of the Masonic program. I think they've been very successful at creating this image that they're just some fun-loving people. I think the Shriners with their little cars in their hospitals, I think that's gone a long way to promote the image that these are just guys that, and we enjoy, we know these guys, have been Freemasons. A lot of guys are just trying to get out of the house, maybe spend some time with the fellas, get away from the wife. But it's the teachings of Freemasonry, the philosophy, the ideology of Freemasonry that is what is anti-Catholic and dangerous and harmful to the soul. So I get it how the vase of Freemasonry doesn't look dangerous at all, but sometimes you just have to look inside that vase and see what's really going on. It's a snake that's about to come out and choke you on the neck.
Yeah.
David, I was talking to a friend of mine recently, and I just want to get your analysis of this situation. He told me that a friend of that he works at a Catholic organization, and this Catholic organization decided to go to an explicitly Shriner restaurant for their Christmas party. And it's in the name. Shriner is in their name. And if you go to their website, they have their food and everything, but they also have like how to join the Shriners on the side on their website. So it's like very, very explicitly. And I didn't even know restaurants like this existed. And he was telling me about this, and I was like, I don't know. Like, if I had a waiter who was a Freemason, I wouldn't make a deal about it. I just, pay for the meal and give him a tip and no big deal. But I don't know how I'd feel about patronizing a restaurant, or if the GRN had patronized a restaurant for an official Catholic Christmas party. That'd be so weird to me. What's your analysis of that?
Yeah, it sort of shows a little bit how teaching this case I'm making in this essay, how teaching has been watered down over the years. There's a time with Clement XII and Leo, all the way up to Leo the 13th, that you could not, you would be excommunicated for giving any commerce, anything to Freemasons. You could not house them. You could not be around them in any way. You could not do anything with these people who were considered to be enemies of the Catholic Church. But nowadays, you got the Shriners hospitals, you got their bars, you got their circuses, and so it's. But this isn't the only discipline that we've watered down over the years. But yeah, I think we should be very cautious towards giving the resources that God has given us to agencies and organizations that invade against the Catholic Church.
In your article, you said all sects of Freemasonry have always been prohibited because they all hold fast to the dogma of indifferentism and the belief that Freemasonry is man's highest good. And I think there's some subtlety in that, some nuance that I believe a lot of guys like myself in the Blue Lodge went right over our head. Like we were swearing oaths that we didn't really realize the gravity of the words that came out of our mouth. We were participating in rituals that we just didn't seem to pay much attention to the actions that we're actually doing and how they may contradict what we believe as Christians.
Yeah. And because that's what it is. When you're at that altar, you have the blindfold taken off. You just have that guy who learns the worshipful master is saying, repeat after me. And you're just saying these things after him, these strange oaths and things like that. The Catholic Church, as far as the Pope's perspective, that's really not concerned in regards to a person can do evil or do participate in those who want to invade against the Catholic Church, knowingly or unknowingly. And so the popes have always wanted, especially Leo, to have the bishops and the priests make Catholics aware of these organizations and what they're teaching and how it is contrary to what the Catholic Church is teaching and our soteriology, our salvation, that it's not your own human works that are going to make you a better, it doesn't matter you making yourself a better person. It's through Christ and his grace through which promotes our holiness. And so I think we've failed all along, especially the bishops and the priests in the church, to really keep this message out in the forefront that people are losing their lives and their souls, at least damaging them and their families by participating in these rites.
All right. When does this article come out?
It'll be this week, Joe. Thanks for talking about it with me.
All right.
Adrian, Happy New Year.
1 Peter 5. Look for David L. Gray's article at 1 Peter 5 this week. Praise be to God. Merry Christmas to you, David.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Go find some strudel. Tell us all about it in the next week. All right. We're going to play our game, Fear and Trembling. It's coming up next. You could win. It's going to be fun. You might learn as well. Call right now, 877-757-9424. The phone number is 877-757-9424. Call right now.